I'm Leslie Liao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. About half of the justices on Taiwan's highest court are set to step down this year. As their seats open up, judicial reform groups are now calling for greater gender diversity on the bench. Chris Gorin brings us this story.
大法官性别均衡，大法官性别均衡，强化性别平等，强化性别平等。
We're here at a press conference where judicial reform groups are calling for more gender and ethnic diversity among the nation's highest court, the Constitutional Court. Now, this court has 15 justices that serve 8-year terms, and 7 of those justices have terms expiring at the end of October, just 3 months from now. They're nominated by the president and approved by the legislature. Now, this court rules on all kinds of controversial issues in the society. For example, they're the court that made same-sex marriage the law of the land. And they're also set to issue a major ruling on whether or not the death penalty is constitutional. An alliance of judicial reform groups has put forth 7 recommendations for the nomination process, but really putting an emphasis on gender diversity.
积极的矫正过去在这个宪法的法庭上面总是以男性观点为主的这个现况。
There are currently 5 women serving on the court, one of which has a term expiring in October. These groups are hoping that President Lai Ching-te will nominate even more women this time around, leading to a more diverse court. But whatever the president decides to do, he may face challenges getting his nominees through an opposition-led legislature. Scott Huang and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's government watchdog is challenging controversial reforms that give lawmakers more power. The Control Yuan is the latest branch of government to petition the Constitutional Court for a review of amendments that give the legislature more investigative powers. The amendments were passed by the opposition-controlled legislature. Opposition lawmakers say they're necessary to hold the government to account, but the president, his cabinet, and the governing party's legislative caucus all say they are unconstitutional. The Control Yuan is adding its voice to that. It says the new powers undermine its own investigative powers. The Constitutional Court has already agreed to review the amendments. A man who crashed his car in front of Taiwan's presidential office has been released on bail. On Monday, the man first drove his car to the de facto U.S. Embassy in Taipei and repeatedly honked his horn. His car was spray painted with phrases including SOS National Cognitive Warfare. Police say he then drove to the presidential office and into a raised flower bed at the front, damaging 3 plant pots. No one was injured. Police said the man, surnamed Du, was agitated when initially interviewed. He has posted bail of around $6,000 and is not allowed to leave the country. An apartment block in Taipei is set to be the first to be rebuilt under a plan to fix up the city's aging housing. In a city where most apartments are over 3 decades old, there's a lot more work to be done. John Van Trieste reports.
It's taken a lot of negotiation, but crumbling ceilings were the final straw. Over 90% of residents in the Songbo apartment complex have agreed to a reconstruction plan, meaning it will go ahead. This will be the first apartment block rebuilt under a plan the Taipei city government launched in 2020. 70% of Taipei's housing units are over 30 years old, meaning they predate toughened building codes meant to make structures earthquake safe. But earthquakes aren't the only problem. Many older buildings, including the 38-year-old Songpo complex, were built with sea sand mixed into the concrete. This concrete flakes, and over time, it corrodes the rebar inside too. Many residents of the Songpo complex have long felt that their building was unsafe, and they're relieved it's going to be rebuilt.
天花板崩塌啊，然后那个女儿墙倒塌，那有些住户只要遇到地震，就是往1楼跑。
这几年都一直都有点住得不太安心。我以住户代表来看的话，我没有遇到说反对的意见。
There are sacrifices they'll have to make, though. The city government says the apartments in the new building may be much smaller.
其实坪数换下来没有到1坪换1坪，我们大概。 我算一算，大概只有1坪换0.5多而已。解决我们住户的一些居住上的安全来讲，还是一个蛮好的一个解决途径啦。
It's taken 2 bidding processes and much discussion among residents just to get this far. Now they have a construction firm for the job. There's the other problem rebuilding plans like this face: actually getting the job done. Getting started can be slow, though industry insiders say things will get easier.
切工切料虽然会造成工期的 delay 呢，但是不是完全无解。尤其在今年呢，政府劳动部开放外劳之后呢，更让我们在移工方面有所补充。
But the deal is done now, and eventually the 130 residents will get new homes. But this is just one building, far from the city's initial rebuilding target of 5 to 10. And the amount of work it's taken just to get to this point shows how far the city still has to go to modernize its buildings. Luffy Li and John Van Trieste in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Legislators are calling for tougher penalties for people caught driving without a license. The current fine of just over $730 was already doubled last year, but it hasn't done much to curb the rate of incidents. More than 40,000 accidents involving drivers without a license have been recorded in the last 5 years. That's more than the number of incidents involving drunk drivers. One legislator has suggested introducing prison terms for offenders, pointing out the costs of the problem to society.
一个死亡是1600万的社会成本，受伤是880万。如果这样算起来的话，他们一再的违规的话，又是全民买单。
Environmental groups are calling for an investigation into a 25-year extension of a coal plant contract.
你们以为云林人没有声音吗？你们以为云林人老弱妇孺都没有尊严吗？
Unit 1 of the Liao power plant in southern Taiwan was supposed to cease operations at the end of June, but the country's state-owned power company Taipower extended the contract on the grounds the plant didn't fulfill its previous terms obligations. With support from some legislators, environmental groups have taken their case to the country's official watchdog, claiming the deal was reached without due process. Indigenous communities in southeast Taiwan have been passing down traditional fishing practices for generations, but declining fish numbers are threatening their customs. Wesley Lewis looks at how these communities are fighting to preserve traditions by equipping their youth with cultural and environmental knowledge.
These teenagers in southeastern Taiwan are keeping a centuries-old fishing custom alive. Every July, 7 indigenous Amish communities in Taidong come together to hold a coming-of-age festival, where elders teach the next generation how to fish with traditional bamboo cages.
我们大人可以带小孩子看生态，给他们生态，又教他们。
But this year, they've struggled to catch any fish. The elders say they've seen a dip in the numbers of fish in the nearby Beinan River. That's why this year, the local government has hired conservationists to teach the teenagers about the area's ecology and the things that threaten it.
鱼类的一个捕捞，可能因为太过度了之后，然后导致了本身在我们现在卑南溪在鱼类的一个本身的一个数量种类上面呢，有一些相对的一个降低的情况。
The conservationists say it's important for young people to learn how to conserve the area's local fish and remove invasive species.
只有认识了在地的原生种跟外种，他们以后在记忆或者是在猎捕的过程，才有办法去判断这件事情。
This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Joint Amish Coming of Age Festival, and it's the first time that matters of conservation have been part of the ceremony. The hope is that the next generation will not only be equipped with the skills to fish in the traditional way, but also know how to look after the local river ecosystem. John Su and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Movie director Laha Meibo won the Golden Horse Award for Best Director in 2022, becoming the first indigenous woman to win the coveted prize for Chinese language cinema. Joyce Zeng reports on how her work showcases Atayal culture.
Back home, where it all began in this village, Taiwanese film director Laha Meibo, the first indigenous woman to win Best Director at the Golden Horse Awards, thinks back on her first movie, Finding Seiyun, which features scenes on this same street. She's from Ropway in northeastern Yilan County, a village local indigenous groups collectively now call the Jingyue community. Laha Meibo says she found herself in film by chance after failing her university entrance exams. She had her sister fill out her applications for her instead. She ended up in the film department at Taipei's Shixin University. After working on sets with famed directors like Zhang Zuoji and Cai Mingliang, she says it was time to find her own story to tell and landed on an old village story of Sayun's Bell.
我当然听说这个故事，后来发现它跟我是多么的密切，因为这个被冲走的、被纪念的这个傻运，她就是我的表姑婆，然后我的奶奶也在这个事件中。
Laha Meibo wrote her first film about life for her people, the Atayal, under Japanese colonial rule of Taiwan. She then went on to explore other aspects of Atayal life, like the quirks of village elections in her 2022 film Gaga, a movie which won 5 Golden Horse Awards, the most prestigious film awards in Taiwan. Aside from a journey of self-discovery, Laha Meibo has fostered the talents of others through her creative endeavors, like actor Yuan Luzing, who started working with Laha Meibo at just 12 years old and has now traveled abroad with her on projects.
What stories do you want to be in? What do you want to do?
Laha Meibo's latest project stars Yuan Luzing in a short as part of the U.S. nonprofit Nia Terra Project, which brings together indigenous creators from around the world.
我觉得其实对自己的文化，你有信心、跟自信、跟理解的时候，其实你对外你都是不会担心的。
Laha Meibo says she hopes her work can inspire Atayal youth and those from other communities and give indigenous people their own cinematic voice. Kamashu and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
This summer, people from around the world will be headed to Paris for the Olympic Games. Among them will be spectators, elite athletes, and at least one delivery driver from Beijing. Bryn Thomas has more.
On August 10th, amateur triathletes will tread the same course as some of the world's top runners. Part of an effort to make the Olympics more accessible, the Marathon pour tous, or Marathon for All, will see lay people test themselves on the same 42-kilometer course used in the Summer Olympic Games.
就是普通大众选手很难有这种机会站到奥运的舞台嘛，然后这次巴黎奥组委就是能给这个普通大众提供这样的舞台，我觉得还是非常激动的。
Yu Shuai is one of the 20,000 hopefuls selected by lottery to compete in the event. A delivery person by trade, he spends his free time pounding the pavement in China's capital, Beijing.
就是可以把工作也当成训练的一部分，然后本身我们送快递也是体力劳动嘛，是吧？然后你看我不管是卸车啊、分货啊，然后给客户报到货、给客户送货、上下楼，然后都可以当成体能训练。
Chinese couriers are known for their speed and hustle. For Yu Shuai, working for JD Logistics is good practice. Day in and day out, he's darting around the sprawling city with weights on his legs, carrying packages up and down stairwells.
实际上，我们一天送货下来的话，步数也都是2、3万、3、4万步数嘛，然后每天给客户送货上下楼，然后我就绑着沙袋送货，这样的话，一天下来虽然说头几天挺累的哈，但是坚持一段时间，我就逐渐适应了，而且我发现，当我下班的时候，我把沙袋摘下来之后，我的2条腿就是特别轻。
This summer, he's attempting to beat his personal best of 2 hours and 26 minutes. And while he's excited to see some famous landmarks along the way, the Eiffel Tower and Versailles, he's also curious to check in with his colleagues in the City of Light.
然后再有一个就是我还特别期待想去到我们那个，因为法国听说也有我们京东的物流仓嘛，我特别想去到我们那个物流仓里面去看一下那边的快递小哥他们怎么送货，和我们国内会有什么不一样的地方。
This summer, people from around the world will be headed to Paris for the Olympic Games. Among the spectators and elite athletes, this Beijing courier will be vying for personal Olympic glory. James Lin and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out the scenes of pride parades across Latin America. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.